All right, we are coming back from the weekend. We are going to be finishing up assignment 4. And this is what we've done so far. We learned what logo design was all about. Vectors are a perfect use case for logo design because they're graphic, flat, clear, engaging, versatile, versus illustration, which is more specific and decorative, right? So we're thinking in terms of black shapes always. We took our refined sketch and we cleaned it up. And we left off here, refining our black vector paths with the pencil and smooth tool in Adobe Illustrator. So I will find all of that in my assignment 4 folder. And what I'm going to look for is my AI file. So when you save a file out of Adobe Illustrator, at the end of it, it is .ai, stands for Adobe Illustrator. If you just double click that file, it will open in Adobe Illustrator. And we're using Illustrator 2025. But except for AI tools, they haven't really changed in several versions. Okay, the next thing we want to do is make sure we understand what we're looking at. And so this is properties. Properties allows you, especially with the small selection tool, to take any vector shape. As you can see, I'm going to unlock them so we can see them. Take any vector path, and it will show you the anchor points for it. And under properties, you're going to see that there is a fill. You can fill any closed path with a solid color. You can also fill it with a gradient, but we're not learning that right now. And you can also give it a stroke, a separate stroke. Let me show you what a stroke might look like. And especially if I change that stroke color, that's the fill color. Stroke color. I gotta click here to get to the stroke, and then I'll pick fluorescent green, right? So that's what a stroke looks like. You do not want strokes for a black shape logo, and this is why. Notice how without the stroke, if I turn the stroke off there, this shape is nice and clean. Goes into triangles nice and clean. But with the stroke, if I turn it on, especially if I make it big enough to make my point, which I can do under properties, what happens? It's nice and clean, it's nice and clean, it's nice and clean. Whoops, it's no longer nice and clean, right? And that's because strokes are a lot harder to control for shape. So we do not use them in this instance. We're always using cutout fill paths rather than stroke paths. Why does that happen? Because that is where this shape started, right? So it starts with a flat line and then it ends with a flat line. And then all the others, that line is just going through a point. And there's no way to fix that. There's no way to say, make this part of the stroke like that. You can't do that while it's still a stroke. So how do you do that? If you do have strokes in your design, which I think I've helped most of you to avoid them. But if you do, this is what you do. You select the stroke, select the path with the stroke turned on, then you go to Object, Path, and you outline the stroke. Outlining the stroke turns it into a separate path that is no longer a stroke. So if I look at layers, you'll see what this looks like. It's here. So now I have one that is like this, right? And one that is just the fill. So these are now both fill paths. Because it's a fill path, what can I do? Well, I can use, like we were looking at in the last video, I can use my pencil tool and I can redraw this edge because now my stroke has an inside and an outside. All right, but we are just doing solid black shapes, right? We're not worrying about strokes. But I show you that because one of the ways to check your black outlines before you're all finished is to make sure there are no strokes anywhere in it. So I'll show you how to check that. So I'm just going to turn that example off. Now, what else do I have showing? I also have these pixels showing. That's because my sketch here is still turned on. So any layers you don't want showing, go to layers, turn their eyeball off. And then as you zoom in, and details matter for logos and vectors, you'll see little things you can fix, like this. That little wobble, this little wobble. Perfect examples for the pencil tool to be able to fix. As long as you can see the anchor points, you draw through them, you end through the path and end on a path, or start through a path, end on a path, it's going to correct it for you. And if you don't want to make more anchor points and you just have a little bit of wobble, you can use the smooth tool to kind of even it out. There we go. Any other wobbles? So I'm checking all my corners. And we're not looking for perfection. You are just getting introduced here to vector design. But if you want to get paid for vector design, especially for logo design, you really do have to sweat the small stuff, because this will be used for lots and lots of things by your client. And you want them always to be confident in their use. Smooth that out a little bit. There we go. Smooth that out a little bit. Smooth this out a little bit. So smooth tool is very helpful. Just kind of averages. And the eye, I like this cool eye shape. Aha. So this is where I left off. So the eye shape I made with a white fill path. You see the white? So if I want to correct it, I can use the smooth tool. I have to select it first, so I can see the anchor points. The anchor points are blue on this layer. I'm going to use the smooth tool. I'm going to try to just soften it a little bit. Just soften it a little bit, but not a ton. I still want it to have that strength to it. Okay, now that I'm happy with the shape, I need to cut this shape out of the shape behind it, because I don't want to have any white fill paths in my logo. Well, all I want is a black cutout. So this is really professional use of Illustrator here. And we use a tool called the Pathfinder. I have it open here. I've shown it in little ways before, like when I merge symmetry. But now I'm going to use the Pathfinder to minus the foreground shape from the background. So I just have to select them both, use my small selection tool. First select this shape, then hold down Command and select the shape behind it. So you can see, hold down Shift rather, select the shape behind it. So now you can see they're both, I have green and I have blue. This one is on top. So when I hit minus, it's going to cut this shape out of this shape. Now, I just did it and moved it all up to here. It's now all one shape. But how can you tell? How do you check? What I can do is now select all of it, everything that's visible, and I can move it onto the gray. And if I do that, I should see gray behind everything. If I have any white, that's a problem. Also, when I select it all like this, this is what I want to see. I don't want to see any stroke. So that stroke should have just a red bar through it. And now this is ready to save as my final black shape vector. So how do I do that? First, I save it as my AI just by saying File Save or Command S. That will save all of these properties. It will save my sketch, but only the things that are turned on will save as my vector file. So now I'm going to save it as what's called a transferable vector type, a way that I can use this vector in programs other than Adobe Illustrator. You'll only do this once you're happy with your vector shapes. To do that, I say File, Save a Copy, just like we were saving a JPEG or a PNG out of Photoshop. But JPEG and PNG are raster formats. We need vector formats. And I've written them up on the board. The two transferable vector formats we want to save it as, besides AI, which is a working format, is EPS, which is Adobe's own transferable vector format. So I save it with the same name, with all the defaults, as an EPS. Make sure that your image is on your artboard when you do this. Don't have it off like this, right? Check it, but then move it back onto your artboard. And then the next type is File, Save a Copy, or Save As, and then you want to make it an SVG, which stands for Scalable Vector Graphic. It's the oldest form of transferable vector format. Save. So let's check that now. So I go to my assignment 4 folder, and I have an EPS. I'm going to mark that red. That is important. And then I have an SVG. I'm going to mark that purple. Now, SVGs are weird. I can open them in web browsers. And when I open it in a web browser, because this is the oldest vector type, you can see there's a limit to how much you can zoom in, but you can see it's a vector. It's perfectly clean. But when I look at the, I'll get back to 100. When I look at the folder, the image icon shows me all the layers, even if they're turned off. So that's why you have that bright green stroke still there. But it's not actually expressing itself in the SVG, but it's there. Does that make sense? EPS doesn't even show you a preview. But this, because we're using Adobe in this class, this is the transferable vector format we need. This I've marked green, the AI, because if I want to make changes to my vector, I need to make it in Adobe Illustrator. Okay, now, because it's transferable, what does that mean? That means I can now open up Adobe Photoshop, because I want to make this printable. And what do I do with Adobe Photoshop? I do not do this. Take my EPS and open it with Photoshop. Because if I do that, it will force me to rasterize it. Why would I rasterize it? Wouldn't that just erase everything we just worked so hard to do by making it a vector? So you do not open these transferable vector files as Photoshop files. Instead, you open Photoshop and you create the pixel space you want. So I'm going to say File, New. I'm going to give it a name. So this is going to be SP25-1 Karl Assignment 4 Black Shape Vector. I'm going to put with color. But actually, I won't put with color yet. But this will also be where we add color. What size am I going to make it? Well, I want to print this just for the midterms. Even though my vector can be scaled to fit any size, what I want is inches, a physical format of 8 by 10 inches. 8 inches wide, 10 inches tall, because my vector is taller than it is wide. If your vector is wider than it is tall, you can do 10 inches by 8. And then what is the resolution I want? Take a guess if I'm printing it. We have minimum of 300. I'm going to just do 350 because I like a little bit extra. Okay, then say create. This is my white pixel grid. If I look at image size, it will show me it's 8 by 10 inches by 350 pixels per inch. As long as it's at least 8 by 10 by 300, you're good. Right now, even empty, even though it's just white pixels, it's 28 megabytes in memory, which is way bigger than my vector file. My vector file, EPS, is only 389 kilobytes. Right? It's actually measured in bytes, not even kilobytes. So vectors, very, very memory efficient. But now this is what I do, and you'll remember it from compositing. I drag and drop the EPS onto my pixel space. It might come in large, it might come in small, doesn't matter, it's a vector. I hold down Option, and I scale it to look good on that page. And I want to imagine that this black space is the black mat that's going around my image. Right? It's this. So I want to give it some space around the edges. This is how we format it for printing. Pre-production design.